our Miami Grand Prix.
F1 driver ratings. This video is sponsored by the wonderful people at Squarespace.
Remember, it's a sprint weekend as well, which means it makes it that ever slight bit harder to give wonderful numbers to drivers. Right, let's get straight into driver ratings, and we begin with Gabriel Bortoleto. Started the sprint in 18th, finished 15th, started the main race in 13th, and did not finish. Gabriel Bortoleto gets a 6 out of 10 from me this weekend. He was looking good, for sure. The sprint was nothing really to note, with the fact that he was promoted one position after Verstappen got that penalty. We'll talk about Max's sprint, I'm sure, just to rub that into Tommy's feelings ever so much. I just love it. I enjoy it. But then the main race,
Should we talk about Charles as well? Sorry.
No. We'll get onto that later, mate. We'll get onto that later. We'll actually might just mute you for that part. But then in the main race, he was running pretty well. Obviously didn't finish, so it's a kind of what could have been. With my grade there, it could have gone higher, could have gone lower. He was definitely running strong. But yes, it's a shame that his engine started to fail around lap 30, I believe. But definitely a better weekend for Bortoleto.
Yeah, I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Bortoleto. The main race was very impressive from him, particularly qualifying. I think he was with Ocon, the star of qualifying, to put a Sauber P13 as a rookie. It's very, very impressive. And then in the race, made a good start, stayed there fighting Hadjar in a V-carb, which I don't think a Sauber should have been doing. And it's very easy to just give a 5 and go, oh, it's Bortoleto, nothing happened. But you've got to look at the machinery he's got. Retirement, of course, wasn't his fault, so I've gone for a 7.
Okie dokie. The fans, well, they gave him a 5. So there you go, Tommy. You've just outed them immediately there. Let's go to Nico Hulkenberg. Started the sprint in 11th, finished 9th. Started the main race in 16th, finished 14th.
I have gone for a 7 out of 10 as well for Nico Hulkenberg. Qualified better in the sprint, which is unfortunate for him because that's the one that's very difficult to score points in, particularly when you're in a Sauber. Just missed out on a point there. Driving the worst car on the grid, he didn't qualify particularly well in the main race.
Worst car, mate. That's the Aston, isn't it?
I don't know. I think it's a mix between the two of them. The two green dustbins. I think the fact that he made his way through the pack and on the back of Bortoleto, he deserves a 7.
For Nico Hulkenberg, I have gone for a 7 out of 10 as well. I feel like this might well have been Bortoleto's grade had he finished. But yeah, Nico had as you say, one position away from a point in the sprint. I know there was loads of penalties, but Nico kept his nose clean, started the sprint in 11th, and then for the main race, it was harder to obviously get anywhere near the points. But a much more pleasant weekend from Sauber, so well done to them. The fans gave him a 6. Alex Albon started the sprint in 8th, finished 11th, started the main race in 7th, finished 5th. I've gone for a 10 out of 10. I don't feel like what's on paper really reflects what the weekend he has had, especially in the sprint. Of course, he got a penalty there for failing to stay above the minimum lap time under the safety car. And it's like, it's such an easy mistake to make, I would imagine, because without that, he finished 5th on track, which would have then been 4th with Verstappen's penalty, and then finishes outside of the points after all of that in the sprint. But then in the main race, P5 on the road. He said himself he could see the podium on track. Williams, relax yourselves, because Ferrari But yeah, I think Albon, once again, we've been saying it all season, and again, Miami is a great example that Albon has stepped up wonderfully and really taken it to his new teammate Carlos.
I have gone for a 10 out of 10 for Alex Albon, of course. Easily the best driver of the race. Of course, the penalty that he got in the sprint, like you say, would have been 4th. It's an easy mistake to make. I actually saw a quote from James Vowles where they explained the incident as well. And basically, Albon had Russell half a second behind him, so he didn't want to slam on the brakes to slow down because of the worry of George going into the back of him because he was only 4/10 behind or something. It's an unfortunate one for Albon because he could have got even more points. But what a performance in the main race. And the sprint, because he was fighting Hamilton in the sprint as well.
The fans, no surprise, gave him a 10 out of 10.
Are you looking to launch a passion project, showcase your business, or finally create the website you've been dreaming of? With Squarespace, you get an all-in-one platform that makes it easy to get online, no matter your experience level. I've been using Squarespace and it's an absolute game changer. Their cutting-edge design tools are fantastic. whether you're customizing templates or using their AI-powered blueprint tool to get your site up in just a few clicks. The possibilities are endless. Plus, with Squarespace's built-in payment options, managing everything from online stores to services is completely seamless, all while accepting payments on your terms. It's so easy to integrate appointment scheduling and email marketing, helping you stay connected with your audience effortlessly. Simply lovely. Ready to create your own website? Head to squarespace.com/p1 to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. That's squarespace.com/p1.
Carlos Sainz started the sprint in 15th, did not finish. Started the main race in 6th, finished 9th.
I have gone for a 7 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz. Getting points in the Williams in the main race was obviously the highlight of his weekend. Fighting the Ferraris, it's unfortunate. I guess probably gutting for him that he didn't finish ahead of them because of the history and, of course, the kind of driver move that he had. The sprint was really disappointing from him. A very silly error to, hit your rear wheel going into that chicane and having that crash. But a decent performance from him in the main race. But we saw what Albon did, so could have been more. I know he's mentioned floor damage, which I'm sure you'll get onto as well, that I'm unsure about because he said an incident with Albon, but from what I see, it looks like they banged wheels. So make of that what we will.
Tommy on the fence for that one. We'd love to see it. He's teased me straight into my grade. 7 out of 10 for Carlos Sainz from me. Is a weekend that could have been for Carlos. Yeah, another mistake in the wet in the sprint, which obviously ultimately caused him to not finish. And then in the main race, I'm a little bit confused because obviously, when you're doing these grades, you try and take into account all the factors, and the Albon Sainz contact was just a product of Norris going off and then rejoining. But it very much looks like a right rear Albon to a front left Carlos Sainz. And yet, I'm reading that he picked up serious damage from that and floor damage. And look, I don't know the absolute inner workings and infrastructure of a Formula One car and how you can pick up floor damage, but I didn't feel like that would be the case. But hey ho, it's still unlucky for Carlos if he was running with an ailing car. And then the lunge at the end, I've watched that so many times, and I think it's more leaning towards a bit of a look what you took from me kind of
revenge lunge
into the hairpin to try and get Hamilton on the last lap, and could see the headlines. Didn't quite work out, but still I think Williams can be generally happy, and Carlos did show some good pace. A 7 is from the fans as well. Isack Hadjar started the sprint in 9th, finished 10th, started the main race 11th, finished 11th. It's going to be a 6 out of 10 for Hadjar this weekend. It's a shame for him that he's sort of finished so close to both points in the sprint and also the main race. He finished 14th on track in the sprint and ended up 10th after everything that went on. And then in the main race, he made a few clumsy errors. He said it himself in the post-race interview. He was kind of kicking himself that he might well have been able to get Tsunoda at the end. Didn't manage it. It's an okay weekend, but I think RB just generally have fallen off a little bit. But yeah, it's not a disaster of a weekend for Hadjar, but no points, so I've gone for a 6.
I've also gone for a 6 for Hadjar. Anonymous weekend, really. You think in particularly a sprint where it felt like half the field got penalties at the end and dropped out, you should have... And you also look at the order of the sprint and people like Stroll up in P5, you think that's a chance to capitalise for these midfield runners. But alas, he didn't. And his qualifying has still been good, but not a particularly special weekend from him, apart from some good qualifying.
The fans gave him a 6. Liam Lawson started the sprint in 14th, finished 13th, started the main race in 15th, did not finish.
I've gone for a 3 out of 10 for Liam Lawson. Again, incidents. Let's start with the main race. Yes, it's a racing incident. It's a difficult, tight turn 1, but you have your part to play in it. But it is a bit unfortunate. But it's still keep your nose clean after what happened the previous day. And his move on Alonso in the sprint was absolutely ridiculous. So unnecessary.
That's how you really feel, Tommy. Come on.
It was so unnecessary. And the frustrating thing for him as well is he was having a brilliant race. He actually was, making his way through the pack, had an amazing start, and would have got points. But of course, the deserving penalty dropped him down. So another one to forget for Liam Lawson.
I've also gone for a 3 out of 10. It's not, and still isn't, the comeback story that we thought was definitely possible with Lawson after the trials and tribulations of his very short career in the main team. He's up against Hadjar, who once again has outperformed him the whole weekend in terms of pace, both in qualifying and obviously the positions where they finished as well. Yeah, getting involved. I don't think there's much to blame. He's pinched the apex slightly, Lawson, whilst going deep into turn one, and Doohan's put his nose in. It's an unfortunate incident for that. But generally speaking, the Alonso one is much worse. It's where I'm really downgrading him because, of course, he's fighting for points there, and I get it. But it's a clumsy error. It's putting a nose where it really shouldn't be. But yeah, it is going to be a 3. The fans gave him a 3 as well. Ollie Bearman started the sprint in 19th, finished 14th, started the main race in 19th, did not finish. 4 out of 10 for Ollie Bearman. It's not a 3 because he didn't crash or anything like that. So it's just been a poor weekend for Ollie, both qualifying in both of the sessions. And I'm just sat there going, please, Ollie, I know you've got speed, but there's clearly mistakes in there as well. There's clearly the inability to hook up consistent fast laps at the moment. But he was running pretty well in the race until he lost drive. But he hadn't pit at the time in which he DNF'd, so he was slightly out of position to where he would have been had he once he'd pit.
This is the most difficult driver, I think, for me to rate. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 for Ollie Bearman. His qualifying really poor in both races. The reason I'm giving him a 6 though is because he would have basically got a point in the sprint without a 5-second unsafe release that wasn't, of course, his fault. Had he not had an unsafe release, he gets a point, and despite the poor qualifying, a point for Haas is a decent weekend because they never score a point. And also, it's a 6. It's not like I'm giving him like a 7 or an 8. So, yeah, that's why I've gone for a 6 for Bearman, but he has to sort his qualifying out because it was very poor indeed.
Okay, all right. Well, let us know how you sit on that one. We don't usually have a 2-point discrepancy between me and Tommy. The fans gave Ollie Bearman a 4 as well. Esteban Ocon started the sprint in 12th, finished 12th, started the main race in 9th, finished 12th.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon.
Ooh,
Star of quali, P9 in a Haas when your teammate is qualifying last is absolutely superb. The sprint race didn't go his way, qualified well again. In the main race, he was fighting Hamilton at the start, of course, had that lovely little battle with him, and of course Hamilton finished well into the points, but Ocon pitted before all the virtual safety car chaos, which basically all the people ahead of him got that kind of free pit stop, which is why he plummeted down the order. So I'm grading him highly because of that great qualifying and the fact that I think he deserved points as well.
It's a hard thing to grade because Haas have moments of brilliance this year and moments of being 20th in qualifying. So it's really quite hard to judge where they sit at the moment. For Ocon, I've gone for a 7 out of 10. Yeah, Haas were on the back foot slightly this weekend, but Ocon did a brilliant job, as you say. Star in qualifying, loves a 12th finish. Both the sprint quali, sprint finish and main race finish was 12th. Yeah, no points, but still, I think it was definitely something to be proud of for Ocon. It was a better weekend for him, especially in qualifying, where we've seen blips from him as well. The fans gave him a 5. Not happy at all. Jack Doohan started the sprint in 17th, finished 16th, started the main race in 14th, did not finish. I have gone for a 3 out of 10 for Jack Doohan. It is tough to watch, and as of recording right now, it seems like that may well have been his last race for Alpine due to the rumours of Colapinto coming into this seat. It's sad to see. I think that I still maintain the fact that I know he's fighting into turn one, but to DNF, putting your nose in a place that I just think it just doesn't deserve to be there personally. You know, I'm watching the replay right now. I'm going to watch it live as we do it, and I know he's eager to have a great, just a great finish in the Alpine. He's got stuck in. Lawson is obviously in a very similar position where he's feeling a little bit, not desperate, but very eager to do something in that V-carb, and they've come together. It is unlucky. but at the same time, you just got to settle yourself into the race. You can't be DNFing like that, and that's why I've graded him harshly, because apart from that, it's just been a tricky weekend overall for Doohan.
I've gone for a 3 out of 10 for Doohan as well. Just a complete disaster of a weekend, of course. The incident in the sprint where he kind of got felt like he got screwed over with the mechanic and being able to turn out the pit lane, which meant he was at the back, but then made no progress in the sprint when there were, of course, opportunities there to do something, and so many people kind of getting penalties and things. Had that brilliant qualifying where he outqualified Gasly, and we thought, okay, Doohan, you've had it in you the whole time, and then crashes literally at turn 1, and very much looking like it could be the race that has potentially ended his Alpine career now as well, with Colapinto rumours flying around again even more. So yeah, what a weekend to forget for Doohan.
Yeah, it's all well and good being a rookie, but he has been involved in a lot of incidents already, whether that's picking up penalties or crashing. So it's not been a good rookie season anyway. The fans gave him a 3 as well. Pierre Gasly started the sprint in 13th, finished 8th. Started the main race from the pit lane, finished 13th.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10. Of course, got a fortunate point in the sprint. He was there to make it happen, of course, when others were having incidents and things. Pretty anonymous, really. Started from the pit lane and finished 13th, which I guess what more can they hope for when all the top teams are finishing the race and stuff. So yeah, just a very anonymous weekend from Gasly, and yeah, somehow just spawned into the points in the sprint after all that chaos.
I've also gone for a 6 out of 10 for Gasly. Probably worth mentioning, actually, he did get out qualified by Doohan for the main race, of course being knocked out in Q1. But alas, the rest of Doohan's weekend was not great. Gasly, on the other hand, of course, as you say, spawned into the points for the sprint after. Again, it was just a case of keeping your nose clean in that sprint. And I think that as much as, you can say, they were going to score points and then didn't, the drivers that just kept a level head in those conditions, it was a very difficult race to do that. So Gasly was rewarded for that and got a point. And then he starting from the pit lane in a race where your car's not particularly working. It pretty much, unless there's a miracle safety car, secures you 0 points. So I've gone for a 6 because, scoring a point, I think he felt pretty happy with that, considering. The fans gave him a 5. Lance Stroll started the sprint in 16th, finished 5th. Started the main race in 18th, finished 16th. I've gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lance Stroll, mainly down to the sprint. I'm sorry, but scoring any points in that Aston Martin is a very, very good job. The main race itself, I mean, anonymous, nowhere near anyone, quite depressing, really, probably. I think he got beaten by his teammate despite Alonso having a lovely little spin at one point as well. Yeah, it's a 7 still because it's a big nod to the sprint where he took full advantage.
I've also gone for a 7 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Yeah, it has to be because of the points that he's bagged. Of course, he got very fortunate with the fact that he had a lot of retirements, but a lot of penalties at the end, but took the gamble, a bit like Hamilton did, to quite early to put on the dries and made his way through the field. Again, in a crazy race, he's been the one to bag a load of points. The main race, absolutely useless, but you have to grade him based on those points that he's taken home in the sprint. So it's a 7 out of 10 for Stroll.
I mean, I wouldn't say fortunate. If he literally did finish 6th on the road. So I think saying that he was fortunate for the penalties, I think is a little bit unfair.
No, I mean fortunate, like he obviously qualified badly and then he made it through the pack.
Hey, you make your own luck, and he did an aggressive strategy like Hamilton.
He's definitely and did a 7 for it.
Did a good job. The fans gave him a 6. Fernando Alonso started the sprint in 10th, did not finish, started the main race in 17th, finished 15th.
Oh dear. I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. Would have got points in the sprint without being taken out by Lawson. But as we know, in 2025, Fernando Alonso is not allowed a point. Whether Adrian Newey has told him, just don't score any points, get that win tunnel time, come on, next year, think about next year. Qualified so good in the sprint as well, and was actually hanging on the back of Albon and Hamilton at the start, so a normal race would have scored points and it would have been a great result. But instead gets taken out, and then unfortunately couldn't do the same heroics that he did in qualifying for the sprint in the main race. and Aston just looked absolutely useless.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Fernando Alonso. I am not convinced he would have scored points. There was 4 laps to go in the sprint, and he had Lawson, Bearman and Tsunoda behind him. He was struggling out there massively, hence obviously the Lawson move, which ended sadly for him being punted in the wall. A reasonably poor weekend. Obviously, I've gone for a 5 because it's a bit of a nod to the fact that he was fighting for the points in the sprint, but I think it would have been a pointless weekend in the sense of championship points. And Lance Stroll just cooked him. No, he didn't.
Wait, so he's fighting in the points, but it wouldn't have been points. What do you mean?
So he was running in 8th, but it was an Alonso train with Lawson, Bearman and Tsunoda all behind him within 2 seconds. I don't think he would have held on even despite the Lawson punt.
I'm talking about points before the chaos is what I meant, and everyone switching tyres.
Oh, I see. So you're vibing prior to that. Fair enough.
And the context of, which probably added as well, that he was basically begging Aston Martin to pit him, and he left him out. Even though Stroll was absolutely flying on the dry tyres, he was begging to kind of come in the pits, and I guess they wanted to split the strategy.
So it's a 5, and the fans gave him a 5 as well. Kimi Antonelli. God, this is a difficult grade, and I would say this one's probably the most difficult.
Yeah.
Started the sprint in 1st, finished 7th. Started the main race in 3rd, finished 6th. Gone for an 8 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli. I feel as though this perfectly reflects the wonderful qualifyings that he did for both the sprint and the main race, but did not deliver to the extent perhaps that we were hoping in both of them as well. The sprint, of course, that was unlucky, and he was maybe fighting for 4th, I believe, until everything kicked off in the pit lane with Max Verstappen being released straight into him, and obviously that's curtains then for him. And of course then gains a few positions after the penalties, which means he scored a couple of points. And then in the main race, he's up to 2nd at the start, but then sadly just didn't really have the pace. I feel like he was quite nervous at the beginning. It felt a little bit erratic. He settled down, of course, but I didn't expect to be saying that he would be beaten by George Russell, especially with how on the back foot Russell looked. Of course, Russell gained a little bit from the VSC, but still 8 out of 10 because I cannot ignore those qualifying performances from a rookie, and overall huge promise for him for future Grand Prix and seasons.
I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Kimi Antonelli. I think this is the race that put him on the map. I don't think the results reflect how great he was this weekend, and I think it's incredibly impressive in race 6 that he just looked quicker than George Russell all weekend. Of course, there was the mistake at the start of the sprint, which, I think we saw the kind of after the brilliant pole in the sprint, we were kind of reminded that he was a rookie of the way he kind of handled turn 1, lost a few positions, and he was going, probably going to finish 4th before the unfortunate incident with Verstappen, where he was literally going into his pit box, so then he couldn't even pit and had to go all the way around again. So got absolutely shafted there. And then in the main race, he did another amazing qualifying to almost get pole position. And then as we got to the pit stops, he'd pitted, and then pretty much the virtual safety car came out straight after. He was running 4th at the time. So I think it was a really impressive weekend, and it's a shame he had nothing to show for it.
The fans gave Kimi Antonelli an 8 out of 10. George Russell started the sprint in 5th, finished 4th, started the main race in 5th, finished 3rd.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10. Slower than Antonelli all weekend, which is a surprise from George. But again, he's picked up some great results. Of course, bit of good fortune, but you do make your own luck sometimes in Formula One. And he went for something different, didn't he, in the main race. Got the leapfrog on Max, thanks to the lovely timed VSC, which helped him a lot. But again, he's just constantly popping it up in the top 5 all the time. The slower of the Mercedes this weekend, but got a bit more luck, but still a good performance from George.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for George. Mainly, qualifyings, he was behind Kimi Antonelli, which was a shock. But in the main races, Russell just doing Russell things. Of course, as we say that he got slightly lucky with the VSC, but there were other drivers out there that were fortunate to be able to pit under it as well. And then after that, he was able to secure a podium, which is just George Russell in a nutshell. He just turns up and somehow just ends up on the podium. That just is George Russell's 2025 season at the moment. The fans gave him an 8 as well. Yuki Tsunoda started the sprint from the pit lane, finished 6th, started the main race in 10th, finished 10th. Good Lord, this sprint has really thrown the cat amongst the pigeons, hasn't it, with some of these grades. I have gone for a 6 out of 10 for Yuki Tsunoda. Of course, scored a point or 2 or 3, in fact, for the sprint with everything that kicked off. And then in the main race, making it through to Q3, but finishing 10th. I don't know whether we've just kind of accepted that this is what the Red Bull second seat is now, but Max Verstappen is still out there delivering things that I don't think even Max had a particularly strong weekend this weekend. So for Yuki to be further back in terms of race trim, don't you raise your eyebrows like that, bro? He was just a long way behind. It's difficult to know where he is at the moment. Of course, he's fighting Hadjar at the end. It's going to be a 6. I'm just locking it in.
I've gone for a 5 for Yuki Tsunoda. I think it was a poor weekend from him, of course. Failed to qualify well in the sprint. Of course, he had the issue, didn't he, where he didn't make the line. But it was not a great weekend from him. When you had kind of all the chaos, yeah, he managed to get a point in the sprint. He is a difficult one to grade, don't get me wrong, because it's that anomaly of the Red Bull car, and it almost kind of gives you a little bit more leeway because of everything that kind of Lawson did and Perez before him. But 10th, when Max essentially got pole position and would have been on the podium without the unlucky VSC, I don't think is good enough personally.
Fans gave him a 6. Max Verstappen started the sprint in 4th, finished 17th, and then started the main race in 1st and finished 4th. So I was laughing at Tommy, not Max's position, before everyone loses their mind. Tommy, what is your grade?
My grade is a 9 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. Basically, the sprint race, he was going to finish on the podium, and you've got to think that the McLaren is basically clear of the field, that they were, so comfortable this weekend that the best anyone else could have hoped for was basically finishing 3rd. He would have done that in the sprint without the issue, which of course wasn't his fault, that he got released into Antonelli. I'd argue that he pitted for soft tyres a lap before the McLarens. It would have been incredibly exciting to see actually, had that race just panned out normally, what he could have done, because he'd have been on the softs with an extra lap of kind of heat in the tyres. Maybe he'd have even challenged them, but sadly we didn't get to see it. If buts and maybes, yeah, exactly. And then in the main race, somehow got it into pole position, tried his best to hold off the McLarens that was so clear of the field, and all he could hope for was 3rd, which he would have got apart from the badly timed VSC.
Why is it not a 10 then, Tommy?
Well, exactly. Probably because I feel like that would be slightly fanboyish, and I've got to keep it real for when he, excels even more than what it is.
He excels more than what he can physically possibly do.
But no, I think it's a very, very strong performance still, despite everything.
Okay, I'm trying to decide whether it's one grade or another. Let me lock in. I think you've nudged me up.
I will actually just say that an 8 is an absolutely outrageous grade and shouldn't even be considered.
Okay, all right. Well, in that case, it's an 11 out of 10. 9 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. The qualifying, of course, was unbelievable. Where the McLarens slightly faltered, in my opinion, wasn't able to get everything out of that car. Max, of course, did put himself in a great position. There is, of course, the lap 1 debate that we've had, and I feel as though this is my time to say that I've reflected and I've looked at the rule book. And I now appreciate and understand and accept your argument, Tommy, for the fact that he shouldn't have got a penalty. I think I'm still very conflicted as to what I want racing to be versus what the letter of the law is. The letter of the law is that wasn't a penalty, and I accept that, and that's fair enough. However, I don't like the fact that is allowed, what happened with Max and Lando, especially when you look at it from the Oscar POV. It is... I just don't like seeing drivers just chucked off the racetrack. I'd love to see more side-by-side action where racing room's given. So that's where
You couldn't get around the outside, though.
Sorry?
You couldn't go around the outside.
What do you mean?
There was no room for Lando to go around the outside.
There wasn't any room because Max lost control of the car and I know you're nodding now, so...
Yeah, but he lost control of the car. He's fighting his car to get traction, basically. I'm even more convinced on this now that if you replace Max Verstappen's car with any other driver, no one even considers it to be a penalty. It's just his reputation of pushing people off, which some would argue is fair, but he's not pushed Lando off. He's fighting his car to gain traction, and it's all his previous reputation is basically the reason why people think it's dirty driving, but it's just not.
So, I'm sorry, you think that Max is only wrestling his car and has no idea or hasn't got a thought for Lando on his outside when he's trying to get on the power early?
Well, he's trying to make the corner, yeah. Of course, he knows Lando's there, but it's not a penalty in a million years.
No, I didn't say it was, and I said I accept that. I'm just saying that the spirit of racing, I don't know if that's what I like to see as drivers shoved off the track. Anyway, let's not open that can of worms again.
It didn't ultimately matter anyway, did it? Because he didn't get one.
No, he didn't get a penalty, and that is fair enough. I accept that, and we move on. But yeah, it's a 9 out of 10 for Max Verstappen. You know, to be in the mix, fighting the McLarens. We discussed this, didn't we, on the main podcast about, should he have fought the drivers? Should he not? Of course he's going to fight the drivers. And the defense, lap one aside, the defensive masterclass that he showed was phenomenal. I don't think many other drivers, Fernando Alonso in Hungary, it kind of makes me think of only definitely. Few drivers could have kept that car in the lead for as long as he did, or at least in those top two positions. So yeah, it's a 9 out of 10. Well done, Max. The fans, however, gave him an 8, and Tommy hates you.
I do.
There you go.
It's an outrageous.
No, we love you very much. We love you all very much. Tommy is
apart from the people that gave Max worse than that.
Okay, wow. Okay, there you go. All right, but I love all of you.
No, I do really. I'm only jesting.
Right, Tommy's jesting. Right, okay, so let's move on to Lewis Hamilton. Started the sprint in 7th, finished 3rd. Started the main race in 12th, finished 8th. God, I'm having to now grade Ferrari as a midfield car, which is disgusting. It's a 7 out of 10 for Lewis Hamilton. There were positives to talk about for Hamilton, but there are also negatives, like qualifying, being knocked out in Q2. I think the sprint was down to him in a lot of ways, that other drivers that took the leap with those soft, dry tyres earlier on. He had to even combat Ferrari wanting to put mediums on. He was like, no, softs. So that's the kind of Hamilton thing that we know he can do. And ultimately, he got 3rd in the sprint. The main race, it's hard to know how much more pace he had if Ferrari had actually swapped the cars where they needed to. It's a solid weekend. That's why I've gone for a 7, but I don't think I can go any higher.
I've gone for a 7 out of 10 as well for Lewis Hamilton. Difficult driver to grade because on the sprint, even though Hamilton's pace is at the moment, he's struggling and he's not the driver that we're kind of used to, and he's still getting used to the Ferrari. We saw the side of Lewis Hamilton where the kind of brilliant side, where he makes a decision, he's forceful, and I do think he could be a great driver for Ferrari to kind of get their arses into gear, basically, because, he came in, he demanded that he wanted the soft tyre, and I don't think enough, again, it's if, buts and maybes, but could he have won the race if he'd have stayed out? Because he was absolutely flying. He flew past Max. I know Max had damage, but he'd have had 2 laps on Piastri and 3 on Lando had we not had the safety car on those dry tyres, and he was absolutely flying. It would have been fascinating to watch, and he deserves a huge amount of credit for making that call and flying through the field. But unfortunately for him, his race was incredibly poor, qualifying not good, and then the frustrations came out. He's racing Ocon, and then should have maybe beaten Leclerc on the road if they'd been quicker with the kind of switch, if you like. One of those difficult sprint grades where someone has a brilliant sprint and a not very good main race and how you weigh up. But I've gone for a 7.
Exactly. The weightings is all down to you at home listening. You can grade it however you want, and that's the beauty of driver ratings. The fans gave Hamilton a 7. Charles Leclerc started the sprint in 6th, didn't finish, and started the main race in 8th and finished 7th.
I've gone for a 5 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc, as Matt does the eyes. It's not a great weekend from Charles Leclerc. The main race didn't qualify particularly great, and we know he's a great qualifier, of course, qualified better than Hamilton, but then ended up with him on the track and that confusion there. And I have to downgrade him for the sprint because, I know it's absolutely treacherous conditions, but he's got his part to play in there for ploughing round really quickly on inters and slamming into the wall. It's not great for Charles' reputation after a brilliant race in Saudi when we kind of lauded his drive and think, future world champion, he needs the car. Unfortunately, this is the kind of bad side to his game where he's still not often, but can still have these big errors. So, yeah, I've gone for a 5 for Leclerc.
I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Charles Leclerc. Of course, outqualified Hamilton in both sessions, speared into the wall on the way to the grid. So that, of course, is a slight downgrade. Yes, I do agree that it was treacherous out there. I think a Haas, wasn't it, spun as well on the way to the grid. I don't know why Ferrari even putting intermediate tyres on when it's a monsoon coming down for them to go round to the grid. But still, it's on Leclerc for going too fast and crashing into the wall. But apart from that, I think he himself kind of said that he was utilising everything, putting good laps in, but the car's just not there. Yeah, it's a 6 out of 10 because he still scored some reasonable points in the main race, and I'm still giving him a 6. And the fans gave him a 6 as well. Oscar Piastri started the sprint in second, finished second, started the main race in fourth, finished first. It's a 10 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. Without one small little VSC in the sprint, it was a clean sweep from him this weekend, despite not getting pole position in either of the qualifying sessions. And some people might think, well, that might be a 9, Matt. No, it's a 10, because Oscar once again, in wheel-to-wheel combat, kept a level head. Now, we have to kind of, I guess, reflect back, and I know, Tommy, you probably will as well, about what we said, that Piastri got through quicker than Norris, and that was a kind of a narrative that went round in social media. And I think it was a feeling when we were actually watching that Piastri did get through quicker. He didn't, from a lap counter perspective, but in terms of chances, yeah. It felt like Piastri, of course, he did have a few chances before he got through on Verstappen, absolutely, but they weren't massive time loss chances, which is what, when we get onto Norris, we'll of course reflect on as well. And again, I do not buy the argument that people go, well, Max locked up against Oscar. No, he locked up because Oscar was through and forced him into a dive bomb into turn one, which he couldn't do with his brakes. He was having problems with his brakes as well. And Oscar forced him into that error, and he kept a level head and took the lead. So it is a 10 out of 10 for Oscar once again. 3 on the bounce. Again, he is performing at a level that he can just do every single week. It's a scary prospect. He's only going to get better.
He absolutely is. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Oscar Piastri. I can't give him a 10 from the weekend. I think I can see why some people, and this again comes down to how you grade it, but when McLaren are miles clear of the field this weekend, I think even Andre Stella said, keep your nose clean because we are going to win this race by a mile, and they did. The fact that he didn't get, pole, I think his qualifying wasn't great in the main race, so there's a bit of a downgrade there. We'll get onto Lando in a bit. The sprint, I think Oscar was struggling as well before the pit stops. He cut over the chicane and it looked like Norris, he was all over the back of him. And had Norris also not had the incident on lap 1 and gone over the runoff, obviously that allowed Oscar to get ahead and he checked out, but it's just not, I can't say it's the perfect weekend when you compare to other weekends where McLaren, with the advantage that they have, will undoubtedly in some races grab pole position and win the race by 30 seconds and be faultless. So that's why I've gone for a 9.
Had he finished first in the sprint, is that you giving him a 10?
I don't know, because do we have to grade them like it's Max in the Red Bull or Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes, where they turn up and they are going to win? I look at sprint start second, sprint finish second, went off battling Lando, qualified 4th. It's not absolute perfection, so I can't give him a 10 because it's not perfect.
So, I mean,
I understand why people give him a 10.
And obviously we have to discuss it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you can have small imperfections and still get a 10 from us.
I think there's more than a few imperfections this weekend from McLaren.
Misses out on pole for the main race by a 10.5, and then misses out on pole in the sprint by, what was it, 400ths of a second? Yeah, 400ths of a second.
In a car that's miles.
But not in qualifying. I don't think that's fair to say. I think, that's where I sort of nudged upon the imperfections was definitely in qualifying, but I think Piastri to have delivered the victory in both of those races against a highly highly skilled teammate like Norris, I think he deserves a 10. But look, 9 or 10, it's still a very good grade for Oscar Piastri. The fans gave him a 10. Lando Norris started the sprint in 3rd, finished 1st, started the main race in 2nd, finished 2nd.
I've gone for an 8 out of 10 for Lando Norris. He finished the sprint in 1st, got a fortunate safety car. I do think that the sprint was maybe better than people give him credit for. I don't think it was like, oh my God, the safety car completely won in the race, because I think had the conditions just stayed normal, I think he would have overtaken Piastri on the road, because he was looking much quicker and Piastri was really struggling before he pitted.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I do. He was all over the back of him.
But they were pitting. Do you mean it had to have stayed in those dry, wet conditions?
Yeah, had they not needed to pit for dries, right, I think Norris would have got him. And then, the main race, not his fault in the first lap racing incident, of course. But I think the fact that he had so many chances to get past Max, and then the way Max held up Piastri gave Norris the advantage to catch up, and I think he was only a couple of seconds maybe behind him, but then of course that opened up again to 9 seconds, and then you think that by the end of the race it was 4 or 5, showed that I do think Norris had the pace to win this race, and he's driving the best car on the grid. So that's why I've gone for an 8. Okie
dokie. I've gone for 1 less than his teammate. I've gone for a 9 out of 10 for Lando Norris. Similar sort of thinking here. And I come back to exactly what I keep saying. And I love that some people will message me going, well, Matt, what do you think now? Norris, you keep saying Norris is quicker than Piastri. Like, deep-rooted. He is. Like, we saw that again this weekend.
And also, that's not... and you saying that as well is not... People think it's you kind of being like, oh, we need to give Lando credit, but in a way it's almost like saying that no, he needs to do better because he's got the pace to deliver. He needs to get past, he needs to do the other bits right.
It's noting the potential he has.
Yeah, he has
but
the
it's
potential,
actually delivering 100%. It, which is it's a double-edged sword, isn't it, with it? Yeah, for Lando, he showed, as you say, in the sprint, he was right on the back of Oscar. Yeah, of course, without that VSC kicking in, I don't think he wins the sprint because of the fact that Oscar got obviously preferential treatment by leading the race. It didn't turn out to be preferential because the VSC came out. But yeah, Oscar would have had that signed, sealed, delivered if we just had the rest of that race and not a Lawson dive bomb on Alonso. And then for the main race, yeah, his wheel-to-wheel was a little bit clumsy in the sense of that there were moves that he tried to pull on Max. I'm not talking about lap 1. That you have to put trust in Max that he's going to give you the room, and we know that that's not probably going to be the case, especially when he doesn't have to. And you just saw time sap away, and then eventually when he got through, he was 9 seconds behind. When Oscar was, and he had a great opportunity, did Lando, I think maybe on the next lap of after Oscar got through, where he tried to swing it round the outside at turn 1. Max, of course, pinches the inside, and then Lando sort of rides on that curb that then just makes basically the plank slide along.
So the one where he gave him the middle finger afterwards, I think.
Yeah, I didn't actually see exactly where he gave him that, but still, that would, had he got through then, this is a lot of ifs, buts, and maybes podcast, then he would have had a great opportunity to win the race. However, he didn't. Got through after 9-second gap, and then he showcased he's got some awesome speed in the car, and his race pace is great. But it'd given himself far too much to do. That being said, he had a sprint win and a P2, so there is still a lot of positives to take from Lando's weekend, and that's why I've gone for a 9. The fans gave Lando a 9. Right, that is it. Who is our P1? For me, my P1 is Alexander Albon. Yeah, what a weekend from Albon. Really solidifying his position at Williams, and you've got on the other side of the garage Carlos saying he's losing confidence in the team, and sort of quite heavy quotes from his side of the garage. So yeah, Albon is pretty savage, considering you think where Carlos's expectations probably coming into this season of where he's going to be fighting for, but perhaps he's feeling a bit of pressure of the fact Albon is doing really, really well. So yeah, Albon is my P1.
So for me, it's definitely Albon, easily in fact. He was absolutely brilliant this weekend, and another amazing performance from Albon in both races.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll see you very soon for another podcast. Lots of love. Take care. Bye.
Bye.